Welcome back to 405 Sports. This is the East region. This is Collen's region. I'll just let you go ahead and go.
All right.
Cook.
First game of my region is actually a playing game between Farley Dixon, something like that, versus Texas Southern. Farley Dixon actually didn't win their conference championship to get into the tournament. They played Merrimack, who's transitioning into Division One. But for that reason, they got in just by making the championship game. FDU has 4 double-digit scores, with the tallest player on the team being 6'6", which is kind of an issue. Texas Southern won the Southwestern Athletic Conference tournament. They didn't win the regular season. They have 4 double-digit scores, but they have trouble scoring outside and free throw shooting. The team has a below 1 on the assist to turnover ratio. They lack a big inside scoring presence and rebounding presence. But I'm assuming Texas Southern's going to win this game just because they have a little bit of size inside and they're a little bit better on offense. So the first game will be a 1-16 game between the winner of the first game and Purdue. And this game really isn't going to be close. Purdue won the Big Ten, both regular season and tournament. They're led by Player of the Year finalist Zach Edey. Purdue has wins over Gonzaga, Marquette, and Duke. I have their ceiling as a national championship, and their floor is around 32. Second game is a really, really good 8-9 game between Florida Atlantic and Memphis. If Florida Atlantic got any other 8 seed, I think they'd be sitting really good. But Memphis is really, really good. Memphis won the American Conference Tournament after beating number 1 Houston. They have other wins against A&M and Auburn. They also lost to Alabama by 3 points earlier in the year. They are led by a TCU transfer to SMU, who then transferred to Memphis, Kendrick Davis, who's cold. He's averaging 22, 6, and 4. Their other big player is DeAndre Williams, who's averaging 18, 8, and 3. Shooting 50, 40, 75. They're one of the top 5 in fast break points. They struggle defensively, but can score with the best teams around the country. I have their ceiling as an Elite 8, and their floor is losing first round. FAU only had 2 Power 5 games this season, one being a 2-point win at Florida, the other being a 13-point loss at Ole Miss, which is pretty bad looking back on it. They're a pretty balanced team. They're ranked top 40 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They also have a really, really tiny lineup. Only 2 players over 6'4". One of them doesn't really get minutes. So I have their ceiling as around 32. They maybe could sneak out one against Purdue. I really like this game. Duke ORU. I think really and truly either one of these teams could. Duke could probably go further, but ORU could win 2 or 3 games maybe if they catch fire like they did a couple years ago. Duke struggled to the start of the year, ended really, really strong with the ACC tournament victory. They have wins over Xavier, Miami, and Virginia. They have losses to Purdue and Kansas that were both really, really close games. Duke is one of the better rebounding teams in the nation. They struggle to shoot the ball outside at times with a really, really slow offensive pace. I have their ceiling as a Final Four and floors losing first round to ORU. ORU went undefeated in conference play and won the Summit Championship. They're 30-4, which is really, really impressive. They're led by Max Abesmith, who I can't believe he's still at ORU in the first place, who's putting up 22 a night. And then Connor Vanover, who's an Arkansas transfer, 7'5", 3 blocks a game. He can give somebody problems if you let him. He can shoot the 3. Or he's on a 17-game win streak, which is really impressive. Have their ceiling as a Sweet 16, the floor is losing first round. Tennessee versus Raging Cajuns of Louisiana. Tennessee did just lose their starting point guard, which I don't think it'll mess them up very much for this game, but it could affect, the next couple rounds. Tennessee has a win over Alabama, Kansas, Texas, and Arkansas this season, but they got swept by Kentucky and they lost to Arizona and A&M. They run a really aggressive man defense that causes a lot of problems for people. If they're a top 3, top 5 defense in the country, if not number 1. They ended the season really poorly. They lost 6 of their last 10 regular season games, and the score was close, but they got smoked by Missouri in the SEC tournament. I have their ceiling as an Elite 8, floors round of 32, because I'm pretty sure they're going to beat Louisiana. Louisiana won the Sun Belt regular season and tournament. They really didn't play many other really good teams this season. The 2 good teams they did play, Texas beat them by 30, and Drake beat them by 15. Or they beat them by 12. They're a really good rebounding team, but they struggle to score. They're god awful at free throws. They're god awful.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. If they get hot from 3, they're all right at it. Have their ceiling as round of 32 and their floor is round of 64. Kentucky, Providence. I'm not as high on Providence as a lot of other people are, so I don't think this game is very close. But Kentucky has wins over Arkansas, A&M, Auburn, and they swept Tennessee. They have close losses to Georgia, UCLA, Bama, and Kansas. Have their ceiling as an Elite 8, maybe Final 4, and their floors around a 64. Providence has wins over UConn, Marquette, and Creighton. They lost a game to Miami, lost a game to TCU, and got swept by Xavier. Their big player is Bryce Hopkins, who's actually a Kentucky transfer, who's putting up 16, 8, and 3 this season. Under their head coach, this is the most efficient offense Providence has had in the last 12 years. Their ceiling is around 32, and their floor is going to be around 64.
Don't think Ed Crosswell is going to be able to stop or keep Tshiebwe out of the paint.
Yeah, I can't imagine Tshiebwe doesn't go off for 20 and 15, if not more than that. Next game is the 3-14 game between Kansas State and Montana State. Kansas State's really good. They have wins over Kansas, Texas, Iowa State, Nevada. They swept Baylor and Oklahoma State, sadly. But they have a really good defense. They're led by a really good dynamic duo of Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel, who I believe both were first-team All-Big 12. I have their ceiling as an Elite 8, Final 4, and then their floors, I have them at a Sweet 16. And Montana State won the Big Sky Conference tournament. They really had no major wins all season. Their big losses were to Arizona and Oregon, who they both played. I think they were both between 10 and 20-point games. They weren't really that close. They're led by Raekwon Battle, who's putting up 18, 3, and 1 in his season. They've only lost 1 game since mid-January. They are top 5 in the nation of free throw shooting. They have a really slow pace and good defense. I have their ceiling as around a 32, and their floor is around a 64. All right, the next game is the 7-10 game between Michigan State and USC. Michigan State has wins over Kentucky, Indiana, Maryland, Iowa, Penn State. They have close losses to Gonzaga, Bama, and Illinois. A really good offense. They can score with just about anybody they want to. Great three-point shooting team. Their problem is they're really bad at defense, and they give up a lot of three-pointers. I have their ceiling is I think they might have a chance to beat Marquette in the second round. So I have their ceiling as around a Sweet 16, and their floor is around a 64. And then USC isn't in the greatest conference, so they struggle to get a lot of really, really good games. They did manage to get a win against UCLA, which is really big for them, and they beat Auburn earlier in the season. They have some not so great losses to Oregon and Wisconsin, and they had not so bad losses to Tennessee, and they got swept by Arizona. They use a 7-man rotation, which is kind of an issue with when you get deeper in the tournament. You guys are going to be a little more tired than other teams. I have their ceiling as a round of 32. They might get a Sweet 16 run. I have their floor as round of 64.
The Trojans of USC, they are one of the highest kill shot rate teams in the country, and that's a round of 10-0. or higher, so they can do that at any moment, and they live in transition. They do the catch and shoot, and Michigan State ranks 320th against catch and shoot 3-pointers. So that's probably the key for USC to have one of those kill shots and get out and transition.
The last game is a 2:15 game between Marquette and Vermont. I really like Vermont as a 15 seed. I doubt they get it done, but I could see that as a game that Marquette could lose. Marquette was both the regular season and tournament champs for the Big East. They had 2 wins against UConn. They beat Baylor by 26, swept Creighton, beat Xavier twice, beat Providence. They did lose to Mississippi State early in the year, which is kind of weird when you look back on it. And they lost to Purdue by 5 or 6. Tyler Kolek is averaging almost 8 assists a game. He's really good at the point guard position for him. Some people say he's the best point guard, if not top 5 point guard in the country. Their leading scorer is a dude named Cam Jones, putting up 15 points a game. Coming out of this region, I'm going to assume it's going to be, I don't know. I could see Purdue doing it. I could see Duke, probably not Kentucky, and then Kansas State, Marquette. It's probably going to be either Purdue or Duke. I'd take a guess, but I really could see like 5 teams that could come out of that if the cards fall in the right spot.
Like you said, I could probably see Kansas State making a run.
If Kansas State plays defense and doesn't turn the ball over, they can beat anyone they want to.
Back to the Vermont one. I believe they made the tournament last year, and they played Arkansas really, really close.
Almost beat them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they could definitely pull it up.
Yep.
They have a really similar. They lost their leading scorer from last year, but
Yeah.
the rest of the roster is pretty much the same.
Well, that was the east side of the bracket, all by Collen. Thank you for watching.